You are not here because you lack discipline. You are not here because you haven't achieved enough. You are here because, despite your relentless effort and undeniable results, the feeling of real confidence remains out of reach. You know how to win, but you do not know how to absorb your wins. You have built a resume that impresses others, but you have not yet built an internal system that convinces you. This book is not another call to hustle harder or chase the next milestone. It is not a collection of motivational slogans or empty affirmations. It is a manual for the high achiever who is tired of living with a split between external performance and internal certainty, a split I call the gap. If you have ever wondered why your self-trust resets to zero after every accomplishment, or why criticism echoes louder than praise, you are in the right place. What follows is not a theory, but a protocol. You will learn why confidence is not a mood to be chased, but a system to be built and maintained. You will see where your mind is leaking proof and how to seal the breach. You will construct a vault of undeniable evidence and learn the art of narrating your own identity from the inside out. You will practice the daily and weekly rituals that keep your confidence stable, not just on your best days, but especially when pressure mounts and setbacks strike. The path ahead is rigorous. It is not designed for those seeking shortcuts or quick fixes. It is for those ready to stop measuring self-worth by applause and start measuring it by the integrity of their own internal architecture. You will be challenged to confront the hidden biases that sabotage your self-belief. You will be asked to trade the fleeting high of external validation for the quiet power of internal stability. You will learn to recover from setbacks without letting them rewrite your story. Over the next 90 days, you will install a new operating system, one that transforms raw action into lasting identity, one that stores your competence instead of discarding it, one that makes you unshakable under pressure. You will become the architect of a confidence that does not break. This is not about becoming louder, it is about becoming solid. Dangerous confidence is not arrogance or bravado, it is calm, earned, and impossible to manipulate. By the end of this journey, you will have the tools to build a self-trust that survives chaos, a presence that commands respect without demanding attention, and a mind that remains steady when the world is anything but. If you are ready to close the gap between what you do and who you believe you are, turn the page. The protocol begins now. Chapter 1. The Gap. Why do you keep winning on paper while feeling like a pretender in your own mind? You push, you achieve, you check the boxes, and yet the internal certainty you were promised never arrives. You are doing the hard things, you are putting in the hours, but the transformation is missing. This chapter will expose exactly why your confidence resets to zero after every victory. You will see why pushing harder is the wrong solution to a broken internal system, and you will learn the exact mechanism that separates fleeting motivation from unshakable self-trust. There is a hidden split between your outward performance and your inward certainty. You have likely spent years doing the hard things without feeling transformed by them. You reach your goals, yet you still feel behind. You look entirely capable to everyone around you, but when you are alone with your thoughts, you feel doubtful, hesitant, and fraudulent. The people who look up to you see a finished product. You only see the missing pieces. The real issue here is not a lack of effort. Your problem is a lack of integration. Action has been happening. You are not sitting on the couch waiting for life to begin. Evidence of your capability has been created over and over again, but your identity has not updated to match that evidence. You are running high-level hardware with an outdated operating system. Your achievements are real, but your doubt is also real. The missing link is how your mind stores and interprets the proof of your own competence. This book is written for a very specific type of person. You are already in motion. You are not waiting to start. You are disciplined enough to perform at a high level, but you are not stable enough to trust that performance. You are high-functioning on the surface and wildly inconsistent underneath. Because of this gap, your daily life is heavier than it needs to be. You overthink simple decisions. You need external validation after every single win, just to prove to yourself that it actually happened. You feel one piece of criticism louder than 10 compliments. And when the pressure mounts, your default response is to push harder instead of understanding deeper. The cost of the hollow victory. If you do not fix this broken pipeline, you will keep achieving without ever absorbing your achievements. Your wins will always feel temporary. You will cross the finish line, feel a brief spike of relief, and by the next morning, the doubt will reappear. Progress will remain emotionally expensive. Every new project will feel like starting from zero, requiring massive amounts of willpower just to convince yourself that you belong in the room. You will confuse more effort with the right solution. You will work harder and harder to feel what a proper internal structure should have built for you automatically. You will chase bigger goals, hoping a larger trophy will finally fix your small internal leaks. You will turn your discipline into a disguise for your insecurity. You will become a master at looking busy and productive, using exhaustion as a shield against the quiet fear that you are not actually good enough. Eventually, you will become highly vulnerable to burnout and self-sabotage. Because your identity is not anchored to your evidence, a single failure will feel like an identity collapse. Rest will feel entirely undeserved. When you hit a slump, it will last longer than it should because you do not know how to recover your baseline. You will risk building a highly successful life that feels completely hollow. You will accumulate more status without more peace. You will generate more output without taking ownership of your power. You will gather endless external proof while remaining starved of internal belief. The architecture of self-trust. When you close this gap, the transformation is absolute. You develop reliable self-trust instead of relying on occasional bursts of motivation. You move away from emotional dependence and step into internal stability. You build a type of confidence that actually survives pressure. When things go wrong, you become less reactive to setbacks and judgment because your foundation is no longer tied to the mood of the room. Your identity finally matches your actual capability. You close the agonizing lag between your performance and your self-belief. You start feeling congruent. The person you project in public becomes the exact same person you are in private. You act with far less hesitation because the evidence of your competence is fully internalized. You no longer have to convince yourself to be brave. You simply act from a place of known strength. This leads to vastly better long-term performance with almost zero psychological drag. You lose less time to doubt spirals. You have more energy available for meaningful work because you are no longer wasting cognitive power on managing your imposter syndrome. Your consistency skyrockets because your confidence stops resetting to zero every Monday morning. This stability bleeds into your relationships and your social presence. You exhibit less defensiveness in conflict. You stop seeking approval in every conversation. You offer calm leadership under stress. People notice when someone is grounded in their own evidence. They can feel the difference between someone who is trying to impress them and someone who simply knows who they are. The blueprint for the next 90 days. The first time you go through this protocol, you will achieve a fundamental shift in how you operate. You will finally be able to name your confidence problem clearly instead of fighting a vague sense of inadequacy. You will recognize the exact disconnect between your achievements and your identity. You will spot precisely where your confidence has been leaking out, and you will understand why raw action alone has never been enough to fix it. You will build a first working model of confidence that does not break. You will understand the chain reaction that creates self-trust. You will see exactly where your mind dismisses proof, and you will learn how to force your brain to retain evidence instead of forgetting it. You will start translating your raw effort into durable self-trust. You will learn to capture your proof, narrate your proof, and reinforce your identity with repeated review. You will also create a recovery mindset long before the next setback hits. You will expect disruption without dramatizing it. You will understand that confidence can be repaired, and you will stop making one bad moment mean everything. To get there, we will follow a strict, non-negotiable sequence. We will diagnose the gap between your achievement and your identity. We will examine why your brain refuses to update its self-image. Soon, you will discover the mechanics of the broken pipeline. You will learn how to construct a proof bank to capture your capability, character, and consistency. You will master the identity shift to anchor that proof to the person you are becoming. You will learn how to stay solid through daily and weekly maintenance rhythms. You will learn how to hit back when setbacks occur. You will uncover the forces of silent erosion that quietly destroy your focus, and you will ultimately step into a state of dangerous calm. I chose this specific order because it protects you from false fixes. You cannot maintain what you have not defined. You cannot repair a system you do not understand. You cannot believe proof you do not capture. Diagnosis must come before tactics, otherwise every exercise becomes random and you will blame yourself instead of the broken process. Theory comes before repetition because you need a frame before you can trust the method. Proof comes before narration because empty affirmations do not stick. The mind only trusts earned evidence. Maintenance comes before advanced pressure. Stability first, stress second, expansion third. Recovery and defense complete the system because real confidence must survive bad weeks and know exactly how to come back. The divide between winners and losers. In the arena of self-mastery, the attitude you bring to this process determines your outcome. Winners build systems while losers chase moods. Winners ask what creates stability. Losers ask what creates a quick feeling. Winners repeat what works, even when it feels incredibly boring. Losers abandon the process the moment the initial excitement fades. Winners absorb proof while losers discard it. Winners meticulously record their kept promises. Losers forget their own evidence and constantly complain that they have nothing to show for their effort. Winners grow stronger from honest review. Losers hide from their own data. Winners expect setbacks, while losers treat them as final verdicts. When a winner takes a hit, they recover fast. When a loser takes a hit, they dramatize the event and stall their momentum for weeks. Winners turn their scars into proof of their resilience. Losers use their scars as excuses to lower their standards. Most importantly, winners build identity from action while losers wait for identity to magically appear. Winners act, record, narrate, and repeat. Losers wait, hope, compare, and retreat. Winners understand that confidence is a structure built on cold hard evidence, not a fantasy conjured by wishing. The operating system reframe. You must adopt the central reframe of this entire protocol. Confidence is not the reward for perfection. It is the result of interpreted evidence. It is maintained by repeated review. It is protected by recovery and environmental design. You are not broken. Your current system is simply incomplete. Your confidence leak is entirely explainable. Your self-trust can be rebuilt from the ground up. This book is not about becoming loud. It is about becoming stable. It is about becoming harder to shake. It is about becoming congruent, where your internal reality matches your external output. You must make a massive mental shift right now. Stop asking whether you feel confident today. Your feelings are irrelevant to your capability. Start asking what proof you have earned. Start asking how you have interpreted that proof. Start asking what system keeps that proof alive in your mind. Stop measuring yourself only by your outcomes. Outcomes can be manipulated by luck and circumstance. Measure your kept promises. Measure your composure under pressure. Measure your recovery speed after setbacks. Stop hoping confidence arrives on its own like a change in the weather. Build it, store it, maintain it. But even the best maintenance system is useless if your container has a hole in the bottom. Before you can accumulate any real self-trust, you have to find the exact place where your current system is bleeding out. There is a hidden fracture in your mental sequence, a specific point where your hard-earned proof vanishes before it can ever change your identity. In the next chapter, we will expose that fracture. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to Grow to the Top and activate notifications to receive more self-improvement tips that will supercharge your growth. And make sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you for your support. Chapter 2, Broken Pipeline. Why do you still feel like an imposter after doing exactly what you promised yourself you would do? You put in the reps, you took the risk, you secured the win. Society told you that taking action was the ultimate cure for self-doubt. They promised that if you just did the hard things, the feelings of certainty would naturally follow. They lied. Action is necessary, but it is not the cure. If action alone created confidence, every high achiever would walk through life with absolute certainty. Instead, many of the most disciplined people on earth are secretly paralyzed by chronic hesitation. They are trapped in a cycle of over-preparation, constantly seeking external reassurance because their internal foundation is cracked. You are in the right place because this chapter will finally explain why your hard work is not translating into self-belief. You will discover the exact location of the hidden leak in your psychology, and you will learn how to repair it before you waste another year chasing empty victories. The illusion of raw effort. Most people operate under a set of dangerous myths about how self-trust is actually formed. The most common myth is that action automatically creates confidence. You are told to simply push through the fear, get the job done, and wait for the psychological reward. But you have already noticed the flaw in this advice. You have pushed through the fear countless times. You have performed under pressure, yet the resulting confidence is always temporary. It arrives as a brief emotional spike, a fleeting moment of relief, and then it vanishes. By the next morning, you are back to questioning your own competence. Another destructive myth is the belief that confidence is simply a personality trait. You look at people who speak loudly and take up space, and you mistake their style for substance. You confuse their volume with certainty. This makes you believe that because you are naturally quieter or more analytical, you are somehow locked out of the confidence game. You ignore the fact that many loud people are performing their certainty to hide their deep internal fragility. Perhaps the most punishing myth is the idea that if you still doubt yourself, you simply have not earned confidence yet. You tell yourself that you need one more win, one more promotion, one more undeniable success to finally fix your self-image. This is a trap. One major win will never fix your confidence forever because emotional highs always fade. Unprocessed wins do not compound. If you do not understand why your current achievements are failing to change your self-image, adding more achievements will only create more fatigue. Understanding this prevents you from using the wrong fix. More effort is completely useless if your internal interpretation layer is broken. Repetition without integration creates exhaustion, not confidence. When you misdiagnose the problem as a lack of effort, you turn your own discipline against yourself. You become a highly functioning, deeply frustrated person who cannot figure out why the math is not adding up. This chapter removes that unnecessary self-blame. The issue you are facing is structural, not moral. You are not weak because your mind filters evidence badly. You simply have a broken mechanism. Once that mechanism becomes visible, repair becomes entirely possible. Uncovering the hidden sequence. To fix the sequence begins when action creates events. You do something difficult, and an event occurs in the real world. Those events then create evidence. The completed task is the raw data of your capability. But here is the critical step that almost everyone misses. Evidence must be interpreted. The raw data does not speak for itself. Your mind has to assign meaning to what just happened. That interpretation then updates your identity. Your brain says, "This is the kind of person I am now." Finally, that updated identity produces durable confidence. Action, events, evidence, interpretation, identity, confidence. This is the confidence pipeline, and right now, yours is completely severed right in the middle. The break happens between evidence and identity. You are generating massive amounts of evidence, but because the interpretation layer is corrupted, that evidence never reaches your identity. The water flows through the first half of the pipe and spills out onto the floor. This is where most people get stuck. They act, but they do not record what they did. They record what they did, but they do not translate it into meaning. They succeed, but they still call it luck. The emotional consequence of this broken pipeline is a life lived on a roller coaster. You experience short bursts of confidence immediately after a win, followed by sharp, devastating collapses after a loss. You live with chronic uncertainty even when you possess real, undeniable capability. The practical consequences are even worse. Because your identity never updates, you hesitate in big moments. You over-prepare for simple tasks as a defense mechanism against your own self-doubt. You develop a constant, exhausting need for external reassurance because your internal system refuses to hold on to the truth. The architecture of cognitive sabotage. Why does your mind refuse to update? Why does it reject the very proof you worked so hard to gather? The answer lies in negativity bias and cognitive filtering. Your mind does not treat all evidence equally. It is biologically wired to scan for threats, which means it naturally gives more weight to your mistakes than to your victories. Over time, this creates a set of default distortions that actively sabotage your self-concept. The first distortion is the success as fluke bias. When you win, your mind immediately looks for ways to dismiss the achievement. You blame it on luck. You credit your team. You tell yourself the timing was just right, or that the task was actually much easier than everyone thought. You refuse to assign credit to your own skill or character. As a result, your confidence never compounds. You start every new challenge with an empty tank. The second distortion is the failure as proof bias. While your mind treats successes as random exceptions, it treats failures as undeniable truth. One mistake is instantly accepted as a final verdict on your worth. You give your losses far more emotional authority than your wins. This is why your confidence collapses so easily. You are operating in a rigged courtroom where the prosecution is allowed to submit endless evidence, but the defense is gagged. The third distortion is the moving goalpost bias. Every time you reach a target, you immediately devalue it. You tell yourself that because you achieved it, it must not have been that difficult after all. The new achievement simply becomes the new minimum baseline. Satisfaction is denied before it can ever stabilize your identity. You condemn yourself to a state of permanent internal incompletion. The fourth distortion is selective evidence blindness. Your memory is highly emotional and deeply unfair. You can remember a minor embarrassment from 5 years ago with crystal clarity, but you cannot recall the 3 promises you kept to yourself yesterday. You replay criticism on an endless loop while completely forgetting the moments you demonstrated real competence. This creates a distorted self-concept that feels incredibly factual, even though it is based on heavily manipulated data. Intercepting the false narrative. To stop this silent erosion, you must map your personal confidence pipeline and intercept the false narratives before they harden into identity. You have to build awareness before you can ever hope to force confidence. Start by identifying a recent success that you did not fully absorb. Think of a moment where you performed well but still felt like an imposter afterward. Write down exactly what happened using only factual, neutral language. Then, write down what you told yourself that event meant. Compare the cold facts with your emotional story. You will immediately see the gap. You will see how your mind took a clear victory and twisted it into a narrative of inadequacy. Next, run a simple evidence interpretation check. Take that same event and ask yourself what a completely neutral observer would conclude from it. If a stranger watched a video of your performance, what would they say about your capability? Now ask what you concluded. Measure the massive gap between the objective truth and your self-story. You must practice. You have to start listening closely to your own minimizing language. Catch yourself when you say things like, "It was nothing," or "anyone could do that," or "I just got lucky." These are not expressions of humility. They are acts of identity destruction. Listen for the language that damages your core self. Statements like, "This proves I am not built for this," or "I always mess things up," or "This is who I really am." These sentences are the exact locations where your pipeline is leaking. Pay special attention to the very first sentence that crosses your mind after a high-pressure moment. Your first thoughts reveal your true operating system. Repeated first thoughts reveal your default identity, and your default identity predicts your future confidence far more accurately than your raw talent ever will. Finally, compare the standards you hold for yourself against the standards you hold for others. Many highly disciplined people interpret their own wins with brutal harshness while celebrating the exact same wins in their peers. This reveals a deep cognitive distortion, not a noble sense of humility. Accurate self-respect is not arrogance. It is simply a requirement for a functional mind. Navigating the traps of awareness. As you begin to observe these broken mechanisms, you will face several traps. The first trap is turning theory into overanalysis. You might start studying the leak instead of actually repairing it. You become fascinated by the psychology of your own self-sabotage, reading endless books about cognitive bias while avoiding the actual work of taking action. Use this theory to diagnose your problem once and then move immediately into proof collection. The second trap is using this framework to label yourself as permanently damaged. You might look at your severe negativity bias and conclude that you are simply broken beyond repair. You confuse an explanation with a destiny. You make the leak a core part of your personality. Treat this like a broken process, not a broken person. A mechanic does not look at a leaking engine and declare the car morally corrupt. He simply tightens the valve. The third trap is trying to force an identity shift before you have accepted the evidence. You want the feeling of confidence without doing the work of proving it to yourself. You try to imitate certainty, but you do not feel it in your bones. This leads to empty bravado. You must gather and translate real, undeniable evidence first. The final trap is noticing your distortions, but changing absolutely nothing about your behavior. Awareness without repetition changes nothing. Insight without a system fades incredibly fast. You can understand exactly why your pipeline is broken, but if you do not install a new mechanism to catch the water, you will remain thirsty. You must move immediately from awareness into a visible daily practice. The mandate to become a better witness. When you apply these concepts, the outcomes shift dramatically. At a basic level, you will finally understand why your confidence has not been sticking. You will stop thinking the problem is your lack of effort. You will start noticing the exact words and phrases that weaken your self-belief in real time. As you get better at this, you will identify exactly where your personal pipeline breaks. You will be able to separate cold facts from distorted emotional interpretation. You will begin catching your confidence leaks the moment they happen, stopping the drain before it empties your tank. Ultimately, you will stop worshiping raw action and start respecting the power of integration. You will build a mental framework that logically explains both your wins and your doubts. You will become ready to build a dangerous, unshakable confidence based on reality instead of reaction. This requires a massive shift in how you operate. You must stop assuming that experience teaches itself. Events do not speak for themselves. Your mind assigns meaning to them automatically, and usually that meaning is hostile to your growth. That meaning must be examined, challenged, and rewritten. Stop asking whether you have enough evidence to be confident. You already have the evidence. Ask whether you have interpreted your existing evidence honestly. Ask whether you have stored it properly. Ask whether your identity has actually accepted it. You must prepare to become a better witness to your own life. You have to notice your actions more accurately. You have to judge your outcomes more cleanly. You have to build your self-concept more deliberately. Winners build identity from action, while losers wait for identity to magically appear. Winners act, record, narrate, and repeat. Losers wait, hope, compare, and retreat. You now know exactly why the sequence breaks. You know why doing the hard things has left you feeling empty. But knowing about the leak does not automatically capture the water. Your mind is currently designed to forget your competence the exact moment you need it most. To fix this, you have to build a mechanism that forces your brain to hold on to the truth. You need a place where your proof becomes permanent, undeniable, and completely immune to your bad days. That mechanism is what we build next. Chapter 3, Proof Bank. Think about the last time you pulled off something genuinely difficult. You delivered the project, you held the boundary, or you executed the plan perfectly despite a dozen obstacles standing in your way. For about an hour, you felt untouchable. The imposter syndrome vanished. You finally felt like you had arrived and that you could trust your own competence. But then the sun went down, you woke up the next morning, and the feeling was completely gone. You were emotionally reset to zero, staring at the ceiling, wondering if you could ever replicate that success or if you just got incredibly lucky. This is the phenomenon of the vanishing win. It happens because you are treating your confidence like cash in your pocket. You spend the emotional high immediately, and by the next day, your pockets are empty. You live as if your proof disappears every 24 hours. You achieve something, feel good for a fleeting moment, and then return to a baseline of uncertainty. You are trapped in a cycle where you have to constantly rebuild your self-belief from scratch every single morning. We're going to stop this cycle right now. We are going to replace your vague, fluctuating self-belief with visible, psychological proof that compounds over time. You are going to learn how to accumulate and organize your evidence so that it survives your worst days. You're going to stop relying on your mood to tell you who you are, and you are going to start relying on a system of undeniable documentation. The treachery of human memory. The biggest myth you have been sold is that you should naturally remember your wins. You assume that if you do something great, your brain will automatically store that victory and use it to fuel your future confidence. This is a fundamental misunderstanding of how human memory actually works under pressure. Your memory is highly emotional, deeply selective, and completely unreliable when you are stressed. Your mind is biologically biased toward threat, not fairness. When you step into a high-stakes situation, your brain does not scan its archives for memories of your past triumphs. It scans for danger. It remembers the time you failed. It remembers the criticism you received 3 years ago. It remembers the embarrassment, the hesitation, and the pain. Stress destroys selective memory, meaning that the exact moment you need to remember your competence is the exact moment your brain actively hides it from you. Imagine your mind as a courtroom where your identity is on trial. The prosecution is your inner critic. It has a photographic memory of every time you fell short. It brings meticulously organized files of your mistakes and presents them flawlessly to the jury. Meanwhile, your defense attorney is relying entirely on human memory. When asked to present evidence of your competence, your defense stammers, forgets the details, and offers vague statements about how you usually try your best. The jury will always side with the prosecution because the prosecution has documentation. What is not recorded is always lost in the emotional noise of the moment. You cannot allow memory alone to carry the weight of your self-trust. Forgotten wins do not stabilize your identity. Unrecorded effort becomes psychologically useless. If you want to build a confidence that does not break, you have to arm your defense attorney with hard, undeniable facts. You need a visible record that gives your actual history more authority than your current mood. This visible record interrupts the lie that you have no proof, and it creates a heavy anchor during your most stressful weeks. Moving beyond the task list. To solve this, you must build what we call an evidence ledger. This is your personal repository of proof. It is a structured, daily record of who you are when it actually counts. It serves as your primary defense against emotional amnesia and forms the practical foundation for durable self-belief. But before you start writing things down, you must understand the massive difference between a task list and an evidence ledger. A task list measures your output. It tells you what you did. You answered the emails, you finished the document, you attended the meeting. Output is necessary for survival, but output fades. Crossing an item off a to-do list gives you a tiny spike of dopamine, but it does not change how you view yourself in the mirror. You can complete 100 tasks in a day and still go to sleep feeling like a fraud. An evidence ledger measures your identity. It does not just record what you did, it records what your actions reveal about who you are. It captures the moments where you demonstrated competence, restraint, and reliability. When you shift your focus from outcome obsession to proof accumulation, the entire game changes. You realize that not every useful win has to be a dramatic public victory. small kept promises begin to matter immensely. You start to see that repetition is often far more valuable than intensity. Many people resist this idea. They believe that writing down their own evidence is weak, unnecessary, or performative. They think it feels like empty self-praise. This is a tragic misunderstanding. Recording your evidence is not self-flattery. It is accurate accounting. Serious people measure what matters. If you track your finances, your business metrics, and your schedule, why would you refuse to track the psychological evidence that dictates your performance? Discipline beats emotional weather every single time, and a structured ledger is the ultimate form of internal discipline. The 3 pillars of undeniable proof. Not all evidence is created equal. If you simply write down everything good that happens to you, your ledger will become cluttered and meaningless. To make your confidence trainable and compounding, you must sort your proof into 3 specific categories. These 3 pillars will form the architecture of your new self-trust. The first pillar is capability evidence. This is proof of your competence and execution. These are the moments where your skill solved a real problem in the real world. You want to capture instances where you applied your learning under pressure. Capability evidence is crucial because competence must be made visible to the mind. When you document the exact moments you handled complex situations effectively, you prove to yourself that your skills are real and transferable. The second pillar is character evidence. This is proof of your values holding up under discomfort. Character is often revealed in small, private moments rather than large, public ones. You want to record the moments where restraint beat impulse. You want to document the times you chose honesty when lying would have been easier, or the times you showed courage when avoidance was the default option. Pay special attention to the hard moments, not the easy ones. Values upheld under stress count as premium proof. Character creates more durable confidence than outcomes alone because you cannot always control your outcomes, but you always control your character. The third pillar is consistency evidence. This is proof of your repetition and reliability. These are the moments where your commitment beat your mood. You want to track your streaks of kept promises. You want to document the times you kept the standard high even when there was absolutely no applause and no audience. Consistency is the bridge from raw effort to a permanent identity. When your mind sees that you do the right thing repeatedly, regardless of how you feel, it has no choice but to accept that you are a reliable person. The daily accounting of self-trust. Building this system requires a simple, non-negotiable daily rhythm. You must keep one dedicated place for your daily proof. It does not matter if it is a physical notebook or a digital document, as long as it is easily accessible and strictly reserved for this purpose. You must record your entries in clear, concrete language. Focus entirely on the evidence, not on dramatic storytelling. Keep the tone factual and earned. There is no room for exaggeration and no room for self-flattery, just clean, undeniable proof. Every single day, you will execute the 3 proofs exercise. You will record 1 piece of capability proof, 1 piece of character proof, and 1 piece of consistency proof. Keeping the exercise short ensures that it remains sustainable. If you demand 10 entries a day, you will abandon the practice by the end of the week. 3 specific, highly targeted entries are enough to force your brain to acknowledge your reality. The secret to making this work is learning how to translate raw events into useful entries. If you write down a weak entry like finishing a call, your mind will dismiss it as basic output. You have to elevate the language to reflect the actual proof. A better entry would state that you stayed calm and clear during a difficult conversation. But the strongest entry goes straight to the identity level, stating that you handle tension without losing composure. You must always ask what the action says about your capability, character, or consistency. You must also learn to count your decisions, not just your achievements. Saying no with discipline is massive evidence. Staying composed when someone attacks your work is evidence. Repairing a mistake quickly instead of hiding it is evidence. Treat your pressure moments as high-value entries. Calm under conflict counts. Follow through under deep fatigue counts. Record this proof as close to the event as possible. Delay weakens detail, and vagueness weakens trust. Fresh facts are always easier for the mind to believe. At the end of every week, you will run a brief proof review. You will scan all your entries from the past 7 days and group them by recurring strengths. You are looking for patterns, not isolated moments. One event can inspire you, but patterns transform your identity. Repetition builds authority in the mind. During this review, you will ask yourself what kind of person the evidence describes. You are forcing your brain to look at the undeniable data of your own competence. Surviving the traps of accumulation. As you build your ledger, you will encounter several traps that can destroy the system if you are not careful. The most common problem is allowing the ledger to become a task dump instead of a proof bank. If you only record what you did but fail to record what it reveals about you, the entries will stay shallow and forgettable. You will end up with a diary of chores rather than a vault of self-trust. Always tie the action back to the 3 pillars. Another trap is only recording massive, monumental wins. If you wait for a promotion, a massive launch, or a flawless victory to write something down, your system will become completely unsustainable. You will train yourself to ignore the daily, quiet proof that actually builds long-term stability. You must count the small, kept promises. You must count the private moments of discipline. Small evidence creates the stable base required to survive major pressure. You must also guard against exaggerated entries. When you inflate your language to make yourself feel better, you reduce your internal trust. Your mind is incredibly smart. It rejects what feels fake. If you write that you completely dominated a negotiation when you actually just survived it, your brain will flag the entry as a lie. Use plain, concrete, earned wording. The truth is always strong enough. The most dangerous trap is stopping the weekly review. Unreviewed proof does not integrate into your identity. Collection without reflection simply creates mental clutter. You have to set a weekly pattern review, even if it only takes 5 minutes. Furthermore, you cannot treat the ledger like a temporary rescue tool. Many people only write down their proof when they are having a terrible week and need an emotional boost. That prevents compounding. You must build the ledger during your calm seasons so that the foundation is already rock solid when the hard seasons arrive. The compounding power of visible truth. When you commit to this daily accounting, the outcomes are profound. In the beginning, you will simply realize that you already have far more proof than you thought. You will stop walking around saying that you have nothing to show for your efforts. You will begin seeing your own daily friction more accurately, recognizing that your struggles are actually generating high-value evidence. As you continue, you will identify clear, undeniable patterns of competence, character, and consistency. You will build a reliable, physical record to counter your bad mental days. When the inner critic puts you on trial, you will simply open the ledger and present the documentation. You will drastically reduce your dependence on external praise and immediate outcomes because your internal account is already full. Eventually, you will create a confidence account strong enough to survive massive setbacks. You will develop a self-trust that is deeply rooted in repeated, visible proof. You will become incredibly hard to shake because your evidence is cumulative. You will stop relying on your selective memory to defend your confidence. You will stop treating confidence like a magical feeling you either have or do not have. You will start acting like your self-trust deserves rigorous daily accounting. You now have the mechanism to capture your proof. You know how to stop the vanishing win. You know how to document your capability, your character, and your consistency so that they never evaporate again. You are building a vault full of undeniable truth. But a vault full of gold does not automatically make you feel wealthy if you never actually look at the ledger and accept that the gold belongs to you. The mind does not automatically absorb the evidence just because it is written down on a piece of paper. The ledger is just the raw material. There is a specific, non-negotiable translation process required to turn that raw data into a permanent change in how you see yourself. If you skip this next step, your proof bank will just be a dusty journal of things you did, rather than a living blueprint of who you are. Soon, we will uncover the exact mechanism that forces your brain to accept the evidence, rewrite your internal story, and permanently upgrade your self-image. Chapter 4: Identity Shift. You can stack 1,000 gold coins in a vault, but if you never claim them as your own, you will still walk through life feeling completely bankrupt. You have spent the last phase of this protocol building a meticulous record of your competence. You have captured your capability, your character, and your consistency. The evidence is sitting right in front of you. Yet, if you are like most high performers, you might look at that ledger and still feel a lingering sense of fraudulence. You see the proof, but you do not feel the power. Why does the disconnect survive? Why does doing hard things fail to automatically change who you believe you are? The answer lies in a fundamental misunderstanding of how human beings process reality. We do not live only through events. We live through the stories we attach to those events. You are about to discover the missing link in the confidence pipeline. You will see exactly why your past achievements evaporated into thin air, and you will learn the precise mechanism required to force your brain to absorb your victories. We are going to move beyond the mere collection of data and step into the actual rewriting of your self-concept. This is the act that almost all conventional confidence advice completely misses. They tell you to take action, assuming the action will cure the doubt. But action without interpretation is psychologically useless. If you do something incredibly difficult, survive a massive setback, or execute a flawless plan, but you immediately tell yourself that you just got lucky, your identity does not change one bit. The event happened, but the meaning you assigned to it was weak. Identity always follows the meaning, not the event alone. This chapter closes the silent void between your raw action and your deep self-belief. The proof has already been gathered. Now that proof must be absorbed. Absorbed proof is the only thing that creates durable confidence. Without this specific shift, your confidence will remain a temporary visitor. Your wins will feel good for a moment but pass quickly. Your setbacks will hit far too hard, and your self-concept will remain permanently outdated, lagging years behind your actual capability. The delusion of passive growth. Before you can build a new identity, you have to destroy the myths keeping your current one trapped in the past. The most dangerous myth is the belief that identity changes automatically with time. You assume that if you just keep working hard for another 5 years, you will eventually wake up feeling like a master. This is a delusion. Time alone does not correct distorted interpretation. Repeated action without deliberate narration can leave you doubting yourself for decades. The mind needs deliberate meaning, not passive exposure. Another massive trap is the belief that empty affirmations are enough to change your self-image. You have seen the advice telling you to stand in front of a mirror and shout that you are a champion. But when you try it, the language feels entirely fake because it is completely unsupported by reality. Your mind is a highly logical machine. It trusts evidence-linked statements, but it violently rejects generic slogans. Narration only works when it is earned. Many people resist this process because they believe that speaking well about themselves is a form of arrogance. They confuse accuracy with ego. Honest self-recognition is completely different from self-inflation. If you ran a marathon, stating that you have the discipline to run a marathon is not bragging. It is a biological and historical fact. Refusing to credit yourself is not humility. It is a distortion of the truth. True humility is accepting exactly what you are, neither inflating your strengths nor denying your earned competence. You might also believe that true confidence means never needing self-reinforcement. You look at highly successful people and assume they simply exist in a permanent state of certainty. You are wrong. Every single identity on Earth is reinforced by repetition. Weak identities are reinforced too, just unconsciously, through a daily loop of negative self-talk. Conscious reinforcement is a strength, not a flaw. Winners direct their internal meaning. Losers simply react to it. The architecture of internal translation. To move from external proof to internalized competence, you must master a specific mechanism. You are going to shift your internal dialogue from stating what you did to stating who you are. Saying that you did the thing is no longer enough. You must translate that into the belief that you are the kind of person who can do hard things. Saying that you survived a setback must become the deep conviction that you are a person who recovers. Saying that you stayed steady must evolve into the identity of someone who is becoming hard to shake. This translation happens through a three-step method: recognize, narrate, and anchor. This is the exact process that turns random events into an unshakable self-concept. First, you must recognize the event clearly and factually. You choose specific moments from your evidence ledger. You focus heavily on pressure moments, recoveries, and kept promises. You must use concrete facts so your mind does not resist the data. You are not looking at a vague memory. You are looking at a documented instance of your own capability. Accurate noticing is the first act of true self-respect. Selective blindness must be interrupted right here. Second, you must narrate the quality that the event revealed. The mind constantly asks what an event says about you. If the answer is weak, your confidence stays weak. You must state exactly what the moment proves. Use plain language, not inflated slogans. Turn the raw events into character traits. If you held your tongue during a heated argument, the trait is not that you won the fight. The trait is that you are disciplined, calm, and restrained. Third, you must anchor that quality to your emerging identity. Isolated statements fade quickly, but connected identity statements stick. You connect the specific trait to the bigger picture of who you are becoming. You look at the evidence of your restraint, and you tell yourself that staying calm in conflict is undeniable evidence that you are becoming harder to shake. You repeat this anchor until the wording feels completely natural and entirely believable. You will put this into practice through the 3 identity statements exercise. At the end of your week, you will select 3 specific proof entries from your ledger. You will write 1 clear identity statement for each piece of evidence. You will read them slowly and test whether each statement feels earned. If your mind rejects the statement, you will refine the language until it is both strong and believable at the same time. You must also use your recovery moments as prime narration material. Most people only narrate their flawless victories, but recovering after a massive mistake is actually the strongest evidence you can ever gather. Repairing damage builds far more identity than avoiding all damage. Confidence grows exponentially when your mind sees undeniable proof that you know how to come back from the bottom. The vocabulary of the unshakable. The words you use during this translation process dictate the strength of the final product. You must develop the vocabulary of the unshakable. This means keeping your narration strictly grounded in proof. There is no room for fantasy. There is no room for adopting a borrowed persona you saw in a movie. You cannot make dramatic claims that your mind cannot verify. You must use present progress language. Do not declare that you are a flawless master of your craft. Declare that you are becoming the kind of person who executes under pressure. Declare that you are building a pattern of reliability. Declare that your recent action is evidence that you can handle uncertainty. Present progress language bypasses the brain's defense mechanisms because it does not demand perfection. It simply demands a trajectory. You must focus on patterns far more than isolated moments. One single event might inspire you for an afternoon, but repeated evidence is what actually persuades the subconscious. Patterns are the only currency that identity truly trusts. When you narrate your life, you are pointing out the patterns of your own strength. Always narrate your character before you narrate your status. Character is infinitely more stable than public recognition. If your identity is tied to being the top performer in your company, your confidence will shatter the moment someone beats your numbers. But if your identity is tied to being the most resilient and disciplined worker in the room, that character survives any bad outcome. Character-based confidence breaks far less easily than outcome-based confidence. Use simple contrast language to make the shift real. Do not tell yourself that you crushed the competition. Tell yourself that you stayed clear under pressure while others panicked. Do not tell yourself that you are an unstoppable force of nature. Tell yourself that you recover faster than you used to. Clean, contrasted language carries massive psychological weight. Surviving the friction of transformation. As you begin to rewrite your identity, you will experience friction. Your old self-concept will fight back. It has lived in your head for years, and it will not surrender its territory without a struggle. You must know exactly what can go wrong and how to fix it when the resistance hits. The most common problem is that the new language feels fake or exaggerated. Your mind will violently resist what it cannot verify. Overstatement breaks internal trust. If you catch yourself feeling like a fraud while doing this exercise, it means your language is too big. The fix is simple. Make the statement smaller, cleaner, and more concrete. Scale it back until it is undeniably true. Another major trap is narrating your outcomes instead of your traits. If you write down that you won the deal, you are tying your identity to a result you cannot fully control. Outcome-based narration is incredibly fragile. The fix is to focus entirely on the quality revealed by the event. You did not just win the deal, you stayed disciplined during a highly stressful negotiation. That is a trait you own forever. You will also be tempted to only narrate your successes and completely ignore your recoveries. This weakens your resilience and keeps your confidence tied to the illusion of perfect performance. The fix is to deliberately narrate your repairs, your rebounds, and your recommitments. Show your mind that you are dangerous not because you never fall, but because you always get back up. Do not make the mistake of doing this exercise once and expecting a permanent change. Your old identity is stubborn. It was built through thousands of repetitions of negative self-talk. New narratives require the exact same force of repetition to take hold. The fix is to pair your identity narration with your weekly review and your daily proof collection. Finally, you must never confuse identity narration with ego performance. You might start trying to sound powerful instead of striving to become accurate. When persona replaces substance, you become fragile again. The fix is to always, without exception, tie your language back to visible, documented evidence in your ledger. The final verdict on your own evidence. This chapter demands a radical shift in how you operate. You must stop acting like your experiences speak for themselves. They do not. You are interpreting them constantly, every single minute of every single day. The problem is that you have been letting fear, insecurity, and negativity bias do the interpreting for you. You must take control of the translation process. Stop letting fear narrate your life faster than truth does. Fear is incredibly quick. It jumps to the worst possible conclusion the moment you face friction. Truth is slower. Truth must be made explicit. Truth requires you to pause, look at the ledger, and deliberately assign the correct meaning to your actions. Identity always follows the loudest repeated meaning. Make sure the truth is the loudest voice in your head. Start claiming what you have actually earned. Do not claim more than you have earned, because your mind will know you are lying. Do not claim less than you have earned, because that is a betrayal of your own hard work. Claim exactly what the evidence supports. You now have the proof, and you now have the mechanism to translate that proof into a permanent identity. You know how to force your brain to accept your competence. You are no longer waiting for confidence to arrive. You are actively constructing it from the raw materials of your own life. But what happens when life gets quiet? What happens when the initial excitement of this new system fades and you are faced with the monotonous grind of a normal Tuesday? Confidence is not a trophy you put on a shelf and admire forever. It is a living, breathing system. And living systems have a terrifying tendency to decay if you do not know the exact rhythm required to keep them alive. You have built the foundation, but if you stop here, it will slowly crumble beneath your feet. The true test of the unshakable person is not how they build their power, but how they prevent it from slipping away. Chapter 5. Stay solid. Imagine spending months building a fortress. You pour the foundation, you raise the walls, you reinforce the gates, and you finally step inside, feeling completely secure. Then you walk away. You never check the stone for cracks. You never inspect the hinges on the doors. You never clear the debris from the perimeter. A year later, a minor storm rolls through, the walls crumble, and you stand in the ruins completely shocked, wondering why your hard work betrayed you. You blame the storm. You blame your materials. You never once consider that the fortress did not fail because it was built poorly. It failed because it was abandoned. This is exactly what you are doing with your self-trust. You have spent the previous phases of this protocol gathering your proof and translating it into a new identity. You have built the structure. But right now, you are treating that structure like a permanent trophy. You believe that because you earned it once, it will simply stay on the shelf, gathering dust, waiting for you whenever you need it. You are about to learn a harsh, undeniable truth about human psychology. Confidence is not a trophy. It is a living, breathing system. And living systems decay the exact moment you stop paying attention to them. This chapter is the beating heart of the entire protocol. We are going to slowly uncover the mechanics of stability. You're going to learn how to keep your confidence alive instead of constantly rebuilding it from zero every time the wind changes direction. You will discover why your emotional highs fade so much faster than you expect, and you will learn the exact calibration rhythms required to make your self-belief less emotional, less fragile, and infinitely more dependable. The illusion of permanent certainty. The greatest lie you have been sold is that once you become confident, you will simply stay that way automatically. You look at people who operate at the highest levels and you assume they possess a natural, permanent mood of certainty. You think they wake up every day feeling invincible. They do not. Natural confidence is almost always trained confidence that has been made automatic through relentless, boring upkeep. Smooth performance always hides years of repetitive maintenance. When you leave your confidence unattended, it weakens. It erodes just like physical fitness, just like a complex skill, and just like trust in a relationship. Your unreviewed evidence rapidly loses its psychological force. The proof you gathered last month means absolutely nothing to your nervous system today if you have not reminded your brain that it exists. Neglected self-trust quietly erodes under the pressure of daily life, leaving you hollow and reactive. Without a maintenance system, you are trapped in the restart cycle. Every single setback, every minor criticism, and every difficult morning feels like you are beginning again from absolute zero. Because you have no structure holding your identity in place, your raw motivation has to do all the heavy lifting. You have to hype yourself up just to send an email. You have to give yourself a motivational speech just to hold a boundary. Your confidence stays entirely reactive, rising and falling with the unpredictable weather of your daily outcomes. Stability creates freedom. When you maintain your internal structure, you spend drastically less time repairing your mood. You act faster because your self-belief is available on demand rather than requiring a massive psychological warm-up. You stop using your sheer willpower to replace what a simple structure should be doing for you. Anyone can feel strong immediately after a massive win. Very few people can stay strong through the monotony, the delay, the criticism, and the deep uncertainty of the long game. The person who stays solid will always beat the person who only knows how to peak. The architecture of daily calibration. To escape the restart cycle, you must shift your focus from creation to retention. Building confidence matters, but keeping confidence matters far more. Retention is the only thing that makes your identity durable, but you must understand the difference between maintenance and obsession. Obsession is emotional, exhausting, and repetitive. It involves constantly checking your emotional pulse, asking yourself if you feel good enough today, and spiraling into anxiety when the answer is no. Maintenance is brief, strategic, and entirely behavioral. It serves your action, whereas obsession replaces your action. You are going to install 3 distinct levels of maintenance. The first level is your daily rhythm. This is designed for immediate, 24-hour stability. Every single day, you will execute a simple sequence. You will review 1 to 3 recent pieces of proof from your ledger. You will state 1 identity reminder based entirely on that current evidence, and you will pre-commit to 1 specific behavior that matters for that day. Think of this as your daily proof, identity, and promise check. You ask yourself what you have recently earned. You ask yourself what that proof says about who you are. And you ask yourself what standard you are going to keep today. You stack these three actions together into a sequence that takes less than 2 minutes. You review the proof, you remind yourself of the identity, and you commit to the behavior. Keep this sequence incredibly short so that it actually survives your real life. If you make this a 30-minute journaling exercise, it will shatter the moment you have a busy morning. You must protect this daily maintenance from your own mood swings. You do it when you feel on top of the world. You do it when you feel completely average. You do it when you feel exhausted, cynical, and entirely off your game. Consistency is the entire point. You are training your brain to understand that your identity does not fluctuate based on how well you slept or how much friction you are facing. You are holding the line before the day even has a chance to test you. The mechanics of pattern correction. The second level of maintenance is your weekly review. Daily stability holds the line, but patterns only become visible over a longer stretch of time. If you only look at your days in isolation, you will miss the slow drift of your habits. The weekly review is designed to catch that drift before it turns into a total collapse. At the end of your week, you will sit down and list your kept promises. You will look at the exact moments you did what you said you were going to do. Then, you will list your missed promises. You will do this without a single ounce of drama, shame, or self-attack. You are acting as an auditor, not a judge. You simply identify where the system broke down. You ask yourself what specific inputs, environments, or interactions strengthened your confidence this week, and what specific factors weakened it. Once you have the data, you create one single correction for the following week. If you notice that you broke your discipline every time you stayed up too late, your correction is not a massive overhaul of your entire personality. Your correction is simply setting a strict boundary on your evening routine. You repair the small breaks fast. A missed promise does not need a dramatic narrative about your worth as a human being. It just needs a behavioral correction. Quick repair protects your identity from absorbing the failure. During this weekly review, you must learn to use your friction as data. When you encounter resistance points, do not view them as proof that you are an imposter. Resistance points simply reveal your weak spots, and your weak spots reveal exactly where your maintenance matters the most. Friction is feedback, not failure. By reviewing your behavior rather than your emotion, you keep the entire process grounded in reality. Feelings can be useful signals, but your behavior tells the truth far more clearly. The long-range calibration. The third and final level of maintenance is your monthly calibration. This is designed for long-range accuracy. As you continue to take action, gather proof, and correct your patterns, you are going to grow. Your capability will expand. The problem is that human identity almost always lags behind actual growth. You can operate at a completely new level of competence for months while still carrying the self-image of the person you were a year ago. Once a month, you must sit down and compare your current self-image with your current evidence. You ask yourself where you are still living from an outdated story. You look at the massive pile of proof you have accumulated over the last 30 days, and you ask if your internal narrative actually reflects that data. Often, you will find that you are still talking to yourself like a beginner, even though your ledger proves you are operating as a professional. When you find this lag, you update your identity statements to match your recent patterns. You elevate your language. You demand that your self-concept catches up to your reality. This monthly reflection updates the story and drastically reduces your internal friction. When your identity matches your capability, you stop wasting energy trying to convince yourself that you belong in the room. You simply walk in and do the work. To support all three levels of this system, you must build visible cues into your environment. Attach your daily routine to an existing part of your day, like drinking your morning coffee or sitting at your desk before opening your email. Use the exact same order every single time to reduce decision fatigue. Confidence is infinitely easier to maintain in an aligned environment. The inputs that surround you shape your interpretation of reality, so you must protect the space where you are trying to build this stability. Avoiding the traps of the system. As you implement these rhythms, you will face several traps that can turn this powerful system into a source of deep frustration. The most common trap is turning maintenance into another perfection project. You try to execute the routine flawlessly, and the moment you miss one single day, you declare the entire system a failure. You must treat maintenance as a calibration tool, not a purity test. If you miss a day, you simply pick it back up the next day. The strength is in the return, not in the unbroken streak. Another trap is over-designing the routine. You make the daily check too long, the weekly review too complex, and the monthly calibration too philosophical. Complexity kills repetition. When the routine becomes heavy, it collapses under the weight of real life. You must ruthlessly cut the routine down to the absolute smallest version that still produces a result. You must also avoid the trap of only using the system when you are in a crisis. Many people ignore their maintenance when life is going well, only to frantically pull out their ledger when they hit a wall. This makes confidence maintenance feel like emergency medicine rather than daily nutrition. It completely prevents the compounding effect. You must use the system proactively during your normal, boring weeks so that the armor is already thick when the battle actually starts. Do not fall into the trap of reviewing your mood instead of your evidence. Mood-based review amplifies your volatility. If you sit down for your weekly review and ask yourself how confident you feel, you are inviting your insecurities to dictate the data. Feelings become mistaken for facts. You must always return to the cold, hard proof, the promises you kept, and the behavioral patterns you established. Finally, never ignore your missed promises. When you sweep your small failures under the rug because you do not want to look at them, small integrity leaks turn into massive confidence leaks. Avoidance quietly damages your self-trust. You must name the miss, adjust the standard, and restore your follow-through as fast as humanly possible. The mindset of the builder. When you commit to this layered system of maintenance, the outcomes transform your entire experience of life. You completely stop emotionally resetting to zero after difficult days. You become hyper-aware of your own confidence patterns, knowing exactly what builds you up and what tears you down. You keep a steady, unbreakable internal baseline across the entire week, regardless of what the external world throws at you. You learn to maintain your self-trust during deep stress, crushing boredom, and massive uncertainty. You respond to criticism with drastically less collapse and far less defensiveness, because your identity is anchored to your own daily review, not to the opinions of strangers. You carry your confidence directly into action instead of sitting around waiting to feel it first. Ultimately, confidence becomes a stable operating condition rather than a temporary emotional reward. Your identity stays solid even when your outcomes wildly fluctuate. You become incredibly difficult to shake because your confidence is maintained on purpose. You stop treating self-belief like a one-time achievement and start treating it like a living system that requires your respect and your attention. You must stop making your confidence dependent on your most recent outcome. Recent outcomes are far too unstable to build a life upon. Your identity must be fed by your patterns because patterns create true steadiness. You have to start thinking like a builder, not a gambler. A gambler hopes for a lucky strike to make him feel rich for a day. A builder lays the base, reinforces the base, and wakes up every single morning to keep the base strong. You now possess the complete architecture of stability. You know how to capture your proof, translate it into identity, and maintain it through daily, weekly, and monthly calibration. You have built the fortress, and you know exactly how to patrol the walls. But maintenance assumes a relatively normal climate. It assumes that the friction you face is manageable and expected. What happens when the sky turns black and a battering ram hits the front gate? What happens when you do everything right, you follow the system perfectly, and you still take a devastating, highly public fall? The structure you just built is about to be tested by an impact you did not see coming, and your survival will depend entirely on what you do in the first 48 hours after the glass shatters. Chapter 6, Hit Back. You did the work. You followed the system. You built your ledger. You updated your identity, and you maintained the structure. You walked into the arena feeling more prepared and more grounded than ever before in your life. And then you got completely blindsided. You failed publicly. You lost the deal. You broke your own discipline. You were rejected, embarrassed, or defeated in a way you did not see coming. The ground vanished from beneath your feet, and in a fraction of a second, all the confidence you spent months building felt like it evaporated into thin air. You are sitting in the aftermath, wondering if the entire system was a lie and if your old, fragile identity was the truth all along. This is the moment of absolute truth. Most people believe that strong confidence means you never fall. They think that if you build enough self-trust, you become immune to the harsh realities of the world. That is a complete illusion. No serious life avoids rejection, delay, or public error. The difference between fragile people and dangerous people is not whether they take a hit. Everyone takes a hit. The difference is entirely determined by how fast and how well they hit back. Hitting back does not mean lashing out at the world in anger. It does not mean throwing a tantrum or seeking revenge. It means striking back against the internal narrative that tries to use your failure to destroy your identity. It means recognizing that confidence that cannot recover is not durable confidence at all. Your recovery skill determines exactly how much one bad moment is allowed to cost you. If you do not learn how to hit back, the fear of collapse will make you play small for the rest of your life. You will avoid risk, not because you lack talent, but because you are terrified of the emotional damage of falling short. The anatomy of the double impact. To master the art of the comeback, you must understand how a setback actually functions in the human mind. Every failure hurts twice. The first hit is the event itself. The second hit is the meaning you attach to it. The first hit happens in reality. You lose the client, you miss the target, or you break your diet of discipline. This hit causes pain. Pain is real, it is biological, and it is entirely unavoidable. But pain does not destroy confidence. The second hit happens entirely in your interpretation. This is where the identity shock occurs. Your mind takes the pain of the event and allows it to rewrite the whole story of who you are. You move from realizing that you failed at a specific task to declaring that you are a fundamental failure as a human being. This second hit causes identity collapse. Recovery only becomes possible when you learn to separate the pain of the first hit from the catastrophic interpretation of the second hit. When you fail to separate them, delay sets in. Delay gives distorted stories the time they need to grow roots in your mind. Shame fills the empty space if the truth does not arrive quickly. This is why early response reduces long-term damage. You have to interrupt the second hit before it hardens into a permanent belief. The illusions of the untouched. Before you can execute a proper recovery, you have to abandon the myths that make setbacks feel so devastating. The most pervasive myth is that truly confident people do not get shaken. You assume that when a high performer takes a massive loss, they simply shrug it off and feel nothing. This is false. Everyone gets hit. Everyone feels the sting of embarrassment or defeat. The difference is their response speed and their cognitive clarity. Shaking is not a sign of weakness. Staying down is the real danger. Another destructive myth is the idea that recovery means pretending it did not hurt. You try to suppress the sting, put on a brave face, and act like you are completely unaffected. Suppression is not recovery. Honest assessment is required. You can feel deep emotional pain without surrendering your core identity. Acknowledging the wound is the first step to cleaning it. You might also believe that the answer to a setback is immediate overcompensation. Your ego gets wounded, so you try to launch a massive, dramatic redemption campaign the very next day. Big reactions almost always come from wounded pride, not from wisdom. Panic action usually creates more errors, leading to a secondary failure that hurts even worse than the first. Stable recovery always beats dramatic redemption attempts. The most dangerous myth of all is the belief that one failure reveals the ultimate truth about who you are. You treat one mistake as a final verdict, but one event is just data, not destiny. Patterns matter infinitely more than isolated episodes. Context matters if you want an accurate conclusion. You cannot let a single bad Tuesday erase months of documented consistency. The 48-hour window. When the glass shatters, you have a brief window to control the narrative. You must implement a strict recovery protocol within the first 48 hours of a major setback. This protocol has 3 distinct phases. Stabilize your interpretation, separate the facts from the emotional story, and repair one controllable behavior quickly. The initial phase is emotional stabilization. When you take a hit, your nervous system is flooded. This is the absolute worst time to make sweeping declarations about your future. You must refuse to narrate your whole identity from your lowest emotional state. Slow the urge to declare a verdict on yourself. Refuse to use extreme language in your first internal response. Do not say that everything is ruined. Say that you are experiencing a severe point of friction. Neutral language prevents shame from hijacking your interpretation. It keeps your nervous system from escalating the story and creates the necessary room for accurate thinking. The next requirement is cognitive correction. You must describe the facts of the situation with cold, clinical precision. State exactly what happened. More importantly, state exactly what did not happen. Identify the damage precisely. Ask yourself if an outcome was lost, if a promise was broken, if your social status was bruised, or if your rhythm was simply interrupted. By isolating the exact nature of the damage, you prevent the failure from bleeding into every other area of your life. You can practice this through a simple mental exercise. State the event in completely neutral language. Then, state the catastrophic story your mind desperately wants to tell you about that event. Finally, state the correction. Replace the distortion with a grounded interpretation and identify one logical next action. You challenge the false meaning with the full context of your evidence ledger. The final phase of the window is behavioral repair. You must restore your forward movement as fast as humanly possible. Do not wait until you feel better. Do not wait until the embarrassment fades. Choose one small, meaningful kept promise and execute it immediately. Use this single action to restart your engine of self-trust. Let action interrupt your paralysis. You must recover your rhythm before you ever try to recover your reputation. Public image can wait. Self-trust cannot. Private repair always comes first. The alchemy of scar tissue. As you move through this recovery window, you must completely change how you view the act of repair. Most people view having to recover as an embarrassment. They think that needing to bounce back is proof that they were not good enough in the first place. You must treat repair as premium proof. Repair takes massive character. Comebacks build deep resilience. Recovery is actually one of the strongest forms of evidence you can ever gather. Strong confidence is not untouched confidence. Strong confidence is repaired confidence. Every honest comeback creates scar tissue, and scar tissue is thicker and stronger than the original skin. You must convert your recovery directly into evidence. Record the comeback in your ledger. Narrate exactly what the recovery says about your character. Use the rebound as undeniable proof that you are not fragile. When you do this, setbacks become part of your confidence architecture instead of threats to it. History is built by people who mastered this exact alchemy. Michael Jordan experienced brutal, highly publicized playoff failures early in his career. He did not let those losses define his final identity. He used the sting of defeat to expose his weak points and returned with a more dominant system. Oprah Winfrey faced massive public setbacks, demotions, and criticisms that would have crushed a fragile ego. She did not allow those external verdicts to end her internal authority. Nelson Mandela endured a long, unjust imprisonment that was designed to break his spirit. Instead of letting the environment dictate his identity, his response became the ultimate proof of his restraint, his vision, and his unshakable character. These individuals did not possess a magical immunity to pain. They simply possessed a superior mechanism for hitting back. Navigating the hazards of the comeback. As you learn to hit back, you will encounter several hazards that can derail your recovery. The most common hazard is dramatizing the setback. You allow the event to get inflated into total failure. Your emotion outruns reality. The fix is to ruthlessly enforce factual language and compare the single negative event to the massive multi-month record of proof in your ledger. One bad entry does not bankrupt a wealthy account. Another hazard is rushing into reckless redemption. Your ego screams for immediate proof that you are still competent, so you take wild risks or overcommit to new projects to wash away the bad taste of failure. Panic action creates more errors. The fix is to restore your rhythm with one small, highly controllable promise before you ever start chasing big wins again. You must also guard against the urge to withdraw completely after an embarrassment. When you fail publicly, your instinct is to hide. You want to cancel your meetings, avoid your peers, and disappear until the heat dies down. Avoidance preserves fear. Silence strengthens the false story in the minds of others and in your own mind. The fix is to take one visible, professional step back into motion quickly. Show your brain that the environment is still safe. Do not fall into the trap of turning self-criticism into an identity. It is very easy to slip from acknowledging that you failed a task to believing that you are a failure as a person. The mind confuses the event with the self. The fix is to strictly separate your behavior from your identity and target the exact mechanical repair needed. Finally, you must never refuse to learn from the setback. Sometimes, the failure was entirely your fault. Defensiveness blocks growth. If you spend all your energy protecting your ego, the pain becomes completely wasted. The fix is to extract one clear lesson, make one structural adjustment, and establish one renewed standard moving forward. The expansion of bold action. When you master the art of hitting back, the outcomes are transformative. On a basic level, one setback stops ruining your entire week. You respond to friction with drastically less self-attack and far less panic. You start separating the cold facts from the toxic shame almost instantly. As you refine this skill, you recover your rhythm faster after failure or criticism. You keep a setback from becoming a full-blown identity crisis. You learn to turn the act of repair into fresh, high-value evidence of your own strength. Ultimately, you trust your ability to come back. This is the ultimate prize of the recovery protocol. When you know, deep in your bones, that you can survive a fall, you stop playing so defensively. You expand your bold action. You take larger calculated risks because you are no longer terrified of the emotional consequences of missing the mark. You become emotionally stronger because you know that collapse is not your destiny. You stop fearing pain more than you fear stagnation. You now know how to build the fortress, how to maintain the walls, and how to repair the gates when a battering ram breaks through. You are equipped to handle the visible, loud, undeniable failures of life. You know how to hit back when the enemy is standing right in front of you. But what happens when there is no battering ram? What happens when there is no catastrophic failure, no public embarrassment, and no massive loss? What happens when you are winning, executing, and doing everything right, yet your self-trust is still quietly draining away? There is an invisible force operating in the background of your life, stripping your confidence down to the studs without you ever noticing. If you do not learn to identify this silent threat, your fortress will not be destroyed from the outside. It will simply rot from the inside out. Chapter 7, Silent Erosion. You follow the protocol. You build the ledger. You learn how to translate your raw evidence into a permanent identity. You even master the art of the comeback, proving to yourself that you can take a massive hit and recover your rhythm within 48 hours. Your fortress is built and the gates are secured. Yet, on a completely normal Tuesday, with no crisis in sight and no failure to blame, you feel your self-trust quietly draining away. You feel inexplicably behind. You feel small. You look around for the enemy, but there is no obvious threat in the room. You are doing everything right, but your foundation is still sinking. This chapter will slowly reveal the invisible forces that are stripping your confidence down to the studs while you are looking the other way. You will discover why your internal work fails when your external world is designed to attack it. And you will learn how to stop bleeding your hard-earned certainty through leaks you did not even know existed. The invisible drain on your foundation. Human confidence is never built in a perfect vacuum. You do not exist in an isolated chamber where your thoughts are the only variables. Your confidence is constantly shaped by the inputs you consume, the expectations you absorb, and the repeated cues in your physical and digital environment. Most people treat their self-doubt as a deeply personal flaw. When they feel inadequate on a random afternoon, they immediately blame their own character. They assume they are simply weak. They do not realize that their environment just spent the last 3 hours systematically training them to feel that way. These hidden leaks are incredibly dangerous precisely because they feel so personal. When you are exposed to constant comparison, the resulting insecurity feels like an objective truth about your worth. When you are overstimulated by endless demands and notifications, the resulting paralysis feels like a fundamental inadequacy in your own discipline. When you are surrounded by a culture of constant performance pressure, the mask you wear starts to feel like your actual identity. If you do not take control of your environment, a bad environment will completely undo all your good personal work. You can spend 20 minutes every morning reviewing your evidence ledger and anchoring your identity, but if you spend the next 10 hours swimming in a toxic digital ecosystem, your morning routine will be washed away. Environmental control is the ultimate secret to confidence retention. When you reduce the number of invisible attacks on your self-concept, you drastically reduce the amount of repair work you have to do at the end of the week. Clearer attention supports steadier action, and better inputs inevitably produce stronger internal narratives. The false prophets of motivation. To stop this quiet destruction, you must first abandon the myths that keep you tethered to toxic environments. The most common myth is the belief that constant comparison motivates you. You tell yourself that looking at people who are 10 steps ahead will fuel your ambition and force you to raise your standards. Occasional, deliberate comparison can indeed sharpen a standard, but constant, passive comparison usually destroys your self-respect. Comparison without context distorts reality. You end up comparing your messy, difficult behind-the-scenes process to someone else's highly curated, polished peak. Another pervasive myth is the idea that more information always helps. You believe that if you just consume one more framework, read one more article, or listen to one more interview, you will finally unlock the secret to unshakable self-belief. But more advice often creates more confusion. Consuming too many frameworks paralyzes your execution. You become an expert at collecting strategies without ever implementing them. This consumption mimics the feeling of progress without producing any actual results. The unused knowledge creates a heavy burden of guilt, and that guilt feels exactly like low confidence, even though the real issue is simply information overload. You might also believe that confidence problems are purely internal, completely divorced from the spaces you inhabit. This is a massive blind spot. Your environment shapes your thought patterns. Repeated environmental cues become deeply ingrained emotional habits. What surrounds you trains what you believe about yourself. Perhaps the most deceptive myth is the assumption that visible performance equals real confidence. You look at people who are constantly signaling their success, and you assume they possess a rock-solid internal foundation. The reality is that many people perform absolute certainty in public while feeling entirely empty in private. Their public smoothness hides a terrifying internal fragility. Confidence based entirely on image and visibility breaks the moment the applause stops. The architecture of modern insecurity. Once you discard the myths, you can begin to identify the specific confidence killers that most people completely underestimate. The first is social comparison contamination. This happens when you spend hours observing the curated highlights of other people's lives. You ignore their hidden struggles, their unfair advantages, and their inevitable failures. The result is a completely distorted self-measurement. You train your brain to believe that everyone else is executing flawlessly, while you are the only one struggling to keep your head above water. The second killer is algorithmic confidence erosion. The attention systems you interact with every day are not neutral. They heavily favor intensity, novelty, and extreme status. Repeated exposure to these artificial extremes trains a deep sense of inadequacy into your nervous system. Your mind starts living by artificial standards, demanding that your normal, daily life match the hyper-edited reality of a screen. The third killer is the performance identity trap. This occurs when you become addicted to looking strong. You start using visibility as the primary measure of your growth. Because your public image is doing all the heavy lifting, your private confidence begins to atrophy. You become terrified of making a mistake because your entire identity is tied to the illusion of perfection. Image-based confidence always collapses under honest pressure because it has no structural integrity. The fourth killer is information overload paralysis. You gather so many conflicting ideas about how to live, how to work, and how to succeed that your execution grinds to a halt. You know too much and do too little. The gap between what you know you should do and what you are actually doing widens every single day, and that gap becomes a breeding ground for chronic self-doubt. Plugging the hidden leaks. To stop the silent erosion, you must run a ruthless audit of your environment. You need to list the specific inputs that leave you feeling smaller, rushed, or chronically behind. Identify the exact patterns that precede your worst mental states. You must learn to separate a useful, inspiring challenge from a corrosive, toxic exposure. You have to actively reduce your social comparison contamination. Limit your exposure to environments that are built entirely on status signaling. Replace passive, mindless scrolling with highly selective observation. Before you ever measure yourself against the achievements of a stranger, you must measure yourself against your own evidence ledger. Your ledger is the only accurate baseline you possess. You must escape the performance identity trap immediately. Stop using visibility and applause as the main metrics of your personal growth. Start giving far more weight to your character and your consistency. Build your private standards long before you worry about your public performance. When your private standards are higher than what the public demands of you, external pressure loses its power to break you. To cure information overload, you must choose fewer frameworks and apply them for much longer periods of time. Turn your advice into immediate implementation instead of endless collection. Review what is actually working in your own life rather than always chasing the newest hack. You can formalize this process through an input-to-impact exercise. Choose one repeated input in your life. It could be a specific social circle, a digital platform, or a type of media you consume daily. Write down exactly how this input changes your emotions and your internal self-talk after you interact with it. Once you see the undeniable emotional aftermath on paper, you must make a definitive decision to either reduce it, replace it, or reframe it completely. The metrics of the grounded mind. As you redesign your environment, you must learn to track how you feel after leaving specific spaces. Some spaces energize your action and make you want to build. Other spaces trigger deep insecurity and make you want to hide. Your emotional after effect always reveals the truth about an environment. Listen to that truth. Always choose depth over novelty. Repetition beats endless variety every single time. Familiar, useful tools will always outperform a constant rotation of new hacks. Confidence grows through deep, sustained implementation, not through surface-level exposure to 1,000 different ideas. Shift your focus to private metrics rather than public metrics. The number of people who praise you is a public metric. The number of promises you kept to yourself today is a private metric. Calmness under pressure is a private metric. Your recovery speed after a setback is a private metric. When you optimize for private metrics, your confidence becomes entirely self-contained. You must protect your attention like a highly valuable asset. Attention shapes identity. Scattered, fragmented attention weakens your confidence because it prevents you from fully engaging with your own life. Focused, directed attention strengthens your agency and reminds you that you are in control of the steering wheel. When you look for inspiration, study grounded examples instead of flashy highlight reels. Look at Serena Williams. Her confidence is not based on a lack of friction. It is based on her competitive resilience under the most intense scrutiny imaginable. Look at Kobe Bryant. His certainty did not come from the roar of the crowd. It came from an absolute clinical obsession with the private process of preparation. Look at Nelson Mandela. He demonstrated immense, world-changing strength without ever needing to rely on performative noise or aggressive posturing. These individuals built environments and internal standards that protected their focus from the corrosive noise of the outside world. The danger of the perfect vacuum. As you begin to clear the toxic inputs from your life, you will face several hazards. The most common mistake is trying to control every single variable perfectly. Total environmental purity is completely unrealistic. If you try to eliminate every single negative input, your perfectionism will create a massive psychological backlash. You will become fragile in a new way, terrified of the real world. Focus on reducing the major confidence killers first and target the highest impact changes. Another hazard is replacing comparison with total isolation. If you cut yourself off from the world completely, your perspective will warp and your standards will drop. Isolation can weaken your drive. You still need challenges. You still need examples of excellence. You simply need to choose clean comparison over constant, toxic comparison. Do not fall into the trap of endlessly consuming advice about confidence to avoid doing the actual work. Learning can easily become a highly sophisticated form of avoidance. Complexity crowds out execution. Implement one single framework at a time, review the results, and ignore everything else until you have mastered the basics. Never underestimate the power of your environment. If you keep blaming your own character for negative patterns that your inputs are actively helping to create, you will generate massive amounts of unnecessary shame. Treat your environment as a core part of the solution, not a side issue. Finally, do not keep toxic standards just because they feel ambitious. Harsh, punishing standards can become identity poison. If your standard requires you to be flawless every single day, you will live in a state of constant deficiency, and that deficiency will block your confidence from ever taking root. Use demanding but reality-based standards that are tied to your actual behavior, not to impossible ideals. The shift from consumer to architect. When you successfully plug these hidden leaks, the transformation is profound. You easily identify the main environments and inputs that weaken your confidence, and you cut them off at the source. You drastically reduce your unnecessary comparison and overstimulation. You walk through your day feeling significantly less mentally scattered. Your attention becomes cleaner and entirely self-directed. You stop confusing the outside noise of the world with the inside truth of your ledger. You create the exact conditions where confidence is actually easy to maintain, rather than fighting an uphill battle against your own surroundings every single day. Ultimately, you become highly resistant to the modern confidence traps that destabilize almost everyone else. You build an environment that quietly and consistently reinforces your self-trust. You stop bleeding your hard-earned confidence through invisible leaks. This requires a fundamental shift in how you view the world around you. You must stop assuming your environment is neutral. It is not neutral. It is training you every single day. It is actively shaping your standards, directing your attention, and molding your identity. You must choose what trains you. Stop feeding the forces that weaken you. Demand less poison and seek out more signal. Better input will always equal better output. You must start designing for confidence on purpose. Protect your attention, reduce the distortion, and relentlessly reinforce the identity you want to keep. You have now secured the perimeter. You have built the ledger, updated the identity, maintained the structure, learned to hit back, and plugged the invisible leaks. Your system is watertight. But what does this actually look like when it fully matures? What happens when you stop trying to prove yourself and finally step into the ultimate, finished form of this protocol? The final evolution of confidence does not look anything like what society has taught you to expect. It is not aggressive. It is not loud. It does not demand the center of attention. In fact, To the untrained eye, it looks like something else entirely. It looks like a very specific, highly dangerous type of stillness. Chapter 8. Dangerous Calm. Have you ever walked into a highly stressful room and noticed the one person who does not seem to need anything from anyone else? They are not speaking the loudest. They are not fighting for the center of attention. They are not dominating the conversation or puffing out their chest to prove they belong. Yet, when they finally speak, the entire room shifts to listen. You are looking at the mature form of the system you have been building. You are looking at a very specific frequency of human behavior. It is not arrogance. It is not recklessness. It is certainly not emotional suppression. It is a state of being that is grounded, earned, and incredibly difficult to break. We call this state dangerous calm. You need a correct target before you can build the right kind of confidence. If your definition of strength is flawed, your behavior will be flawed. Most people chase swagger and call it strength. They think that if they can just learn to project enough bravado, the world will finally respect them and their internal doubts will vanish. This is a tragic misunderstanding of power. Clarity protects you from counterfeit confidence. Dangerous confidence is the final identity standard of this entire protocol. It integrates your proof, your narration, your maintenance, your recovery, and your environmental defense into one unified operating system. It shows you exactly what all the previous chapters were building toward. When you step into this state, it changes how you move in every single arena of your life. In your work, it drastically sharpens your decision-making because you are no longer choosing the path that simply makes you look good. In your relationships, it lowers your defensiveness because you no longer view every piece of feedback as a lethal attack on your worth. And when the pressure spikes, it keeps you entirely stable instead of theatrical. You become dangerous not because you are loud or aggressive, but because you remain completely functional while everyone else is losing their minds. The illusion of the loudest voice. To understand what dangerous calm actually is, you must first understand what it is not. You have to strip away the myths that have clouded your vision for years. The most common myth is that true confidence means being completely fearless. You assume that the people operating at the highest levels simply do not feel fear anymore. This is entirely false. Fear still appears. The nervous system still reacts to threat and uncertainty. The key is not the absence of fear, but the refusal to obey it blindly. Dangerous confidence includes calm, deliberate action in the exact presence of fear. Another pervasive myth is that confidence means dominating every single room you enter. You think you have to be the alpha, the loudest voice, the person who controls every interaction. But dominance is almost always a form of compensation. Loudness often hides a deep, terrifying fragility. Real confidence does not need to announce itself constantly. It does not need to prove its existence to strangers. You might also believe that confidence means never caring what people think. You see gurus telling you to ignore all opinions and operate as a lone wolf. But social feedback actually matters. It provides necessary data about your impact on the world. The problem is not caring. The problem is dependence. Dangerous confidence weighs social feedback carefully without ever surrendering its core identity to the crowd. Perhaps the most dangerous myth is the assumption that calm equals weakness. In a culture that rewards spectacle, outrage, and constant noise, stillness is often misinterpreted as a lack of passion or a lack of power. But calm can be the absolute highest form of strength. Composure under severe stress signals absolute control. Stillness is infinitely more powerful than spectacle because it proves that your internal environment is stronger than your external environment. The 3 strata of self-belief. Confidence is not a single, flat emotion. It is a highly structured, layered architecture. If you try to skip to the top layer without building the foundation, the entire structure will collapse the moment the wind blows. You must understand the difference between fragile confidence, resilient confidence, and dangerous confidence. The first layer is fragile confidence. This is where most of the world lives. Fragile confidence is based entirely on recent outcomes, public praise, and winning streaks. When you close a deal, get a promotion, or receive a compliment, you feel like a giant. But because this confidence is tied to external variables you cannot control, it breaks instantly under criticism, delay, or failure. It feels incredibly strong until life pushes back, and then it shatters into 1,000 pieces. The second layer is resilient confidence. This is a massive step up. Resilient confidence is based on your character, your discipline, and your repeated proof. It survives far more pressure because it is not purely outcome-driven. When you lose a deal, you do not lose your identity because your identity is tied to the fact that you prepared relentlessly and acted with integrity. This layer builds real stability over time. It allows you to take hits without losing your baseline. The third and final layer is dangerous confidence. This is the integration of everything you have learned. It combines your evidence, your identity, your maintenance routines, and your recovery protocols into an unshakable operating system. A person with dangerous confidence stays completely functional under maximum pressure. They need drastically less external validation because their internal order is so strong. They are hard to manipulate because they do not crave your approval. They are hard to intimidate because they know their own evidence, and they are hard to derail because they know exactly how to recover if they fall. The crucible of private standards. You cannot fake your way into this final layer. Dangerous confidence cannot be conjured through willpower or positive thinking. It must be built sequentially. You must build your confidence on evidence first. You review your proof consistently. You narrate it accurately. You absolutely refuse to take image-based shortcuts. You force your mind to look at the undeniable data of your own competence every single day. Next, you must build your confidence on character. You have to weight your integrity infinitely higher than the applause of the crowd. You must count your restraint, your honesty, and your daily discipline as your most central, premium proof. You have to let your private standards outrank public praise. You must decide exactly what kind of person you are when absolutely no one is watching. Let your identity become less dependent on an audience. Build your self-respect through ruthless consistency with those private standards. Finally, you must build your confidence on recovery. You have to train your bounce-back ability. You must expect impact without expecting collapse. Let every single comeback harden your system. When you integrate these three layers, the visible difference between performance and presence becomes obvious. Performance seeks to impress the room. Presence communicates certainty without an ounce of strain. Presence is simply the natural byproduct of deep internal order. You can test your progress through a simple classification exercise. The next time you face a significant challenge, pause and ask yourself 3 questions. First, write down exactly how a fragile confidence would respond to this situation. It would likely panic, blame others, or quit. Second, write down how a resilient confidence would respond. It would likely brace for impact, endure the pain, and keep moving. Third, write down how a dangerous confidence would respond. It would likely observe the threat calmly, separate the facts from the emotion, and execute the next logical step without a single drop of unnecessary drama. Once you have mapped out the 3 responses, you simply choose the behavior that matches the dangerous response. The mirror of sudden friction. As you step into this new identity, you must learn to navigate the subtle traps of the ego. You must deliberately lower your need to be seen as confident. The desperate need to appear strong often weakens your real strength. Internal confidence always grows in private first. Your presence actually becomes much stronger when your performance pressure drops. When you stop trying to convince people that you are capable, your natural capability finally has the room to breathe. You must learn to use pressure as a mirror. Hard situations do not create your character, they reveal the actual layer of your confidence. Pressure shows you immediately whether your identity is real or borrowed. If you snap, panic, and lash out the moment things go wrong, your confidence was fragile. Let the pressure teach you. Do not let it embarrass you. Use it as diagnostic data to see where your fortress needs more reinforcement. Practice using shorter, stronger language with yourself. When the chaos hits, Do not launch into a long, complicated internal monologue about your worth. Use clean, commanding directives. Tell yourself that you can handle this. Tell yourself to stay clear. Tell yourself to respond, do not react. Short language cuts through the noise of a panicked nervous system. You must strictly separate your confidence from your ego. Ego needs constant proof from the outside world. Confidence draws entirely from your stored internal proof. Ego gets incredibly loud and aggressive when it is threatened. Confidence stays quiet and functional. Watch closely for status addiction. Needing to rank above everyone else in the room is a fragile, exhausting game. Dangerous confidence is far more interested in maintaining internal standards than in winning a constant game of comparison. You can and should compete fiercely, but you must never become dependent on winning every visible moment just to feel whole. The architects of stillness. To fully grasp this concept, you must study real examples of dangerous calm in the world. Look at Jocko Willink. He is a prime example of extreme ownership and unshakable composure. His authority does not come from frantic yelling or emotional volatility. It comes from a deeply internalized standard of discipline and the ability to remain completely analytical when the environment descends into chaos. He proves that true leadership is about steadiness, not panic. Look at Serena Williams. Her legacy is not just built on her physical dominance, but on her repeated recovery under massive, suffocating pressure. She demonstrates what it means to take a hit, process the friction, and return fire with absolute precision. She proves that true champions are defined by their ability to maintain their identity when the entire world is watching them struggle. Look at Nelson Mandela. He is the ultimate example of moral steadiness without theatrics. He endured decades of unjust imprisonment, a situation designed specifically to break his identity and strip away his power. Yet he emerged not with loud, chaotic vengeance, but with a dangerous, quiet authority that changed the course of history. He proves that your internal environment can remain completely sovereign regardless of the external constraints placed upon you. Look at David Goggins. He illustrates an identity forged through direct, voluntary confrontation with difficulty. He did not start with a natural reserve of confidence. He built it, layer by layer, by forcing himself into the fire and documenting his own survival. He proves that you can harden your mind and rewrite your entire self-concept by refusing to negotiate with your own weakness. The final evolution. When you fully embody this state, the results are undeniable. You completely stop confusing confidence with showmanship. You define a much more accurate, grounded model of strength. You become deeply unimpressed by the loud weakness you see in yourself and in others. You carry a profound calm into pressure, conflict, and uncertainty. You act with almost zero need for external validation, building a quiet authority instead of a noisy, fragile image. The ultimate outcome is that you become hard to intimidate, hard to manipulate, and hard to derail. Your confidence remains completely stable because it is rooted in cold reality, tested character, and a proven history of recovery. You embody dangerous calm. You are not loud. You are not fake. You are not brittle. You are just solid. You must be careful not to mistake emotional suppression for this calm. If you look controlled on the outside, but you are internally shut down and suffocating, you are not dangerous. You are just a pressure cooker waiting to explode. Emotion must be processed, not buried. You must stay aware of your feelings while remaining entirely disciplined in your response. Do not perform confidence instead of building it. Do not become rigid or arrogant, confusing strength with a refusal to learn. Pair your unshakable confidence with absolute honesty, deep humility, and rapid adaptation. Stop chasing the appearance of confidence. Appearance is incredibly cheap. Performance is fragile. Substance is the only thing that lasts. Stop defining your strength by how much noise you can make. Calm is strength. Clarity is strength. Recovery is strength. Aim for the absolute hardest kind of confidence to build. Earned, quiet, unshakable. You now understand the architecture of the unshakable mind. You know the mechanisms, you know the traps, and you know exactly what the final target looks like. You possess the complete blueprint for a confidence that does not break. But understanding the theory of a weapon is very different from actually pulling the trigger. Reading about the system does not install the system. There is one final threshold you must cross to lock this entire protocol into your daily reality. And if you fail to take this exact next step, everything you have learned will remain nothing more than a beautiful, useless theory. Chapter 9, The Protocol. You are standing at the edge of the ultimate threshold. You have the theory, you have the mechanics, and you know exactly where your old system failed. You understand the invisible leaks, the broken pipeline, and the immense power of dangerous calm. But knowledge without execution is just another sophisticated form of self-sabotage. Understanding the architecture of a fortress does not protect you from the storm. Only building the fortress protects you. This chapter turns everything you have learned into a unified, breathing system. We are going to gather every major teaching and arrange them into a relentless, practical path that you can actually follow. We are going to move you out of the realm of admiration and push you directly into the realm of implementation. The transition from theory to lifestyle requires a bridge, and that bridge is repetition. Repetition is the only force on earth that turns a conscious strategy into an unconscious identity. What starts as deliberate mechanical practice today will become a low-effort, natural behavior tomorrow. Confidence that does not break is not magic. It is not a genetic gift. It is simply repeated evidence, repeated narration, repeated repair, and repeated maintenance, executed relentlessly until stability becomes your normal operating condition. You are about to step into a 90-day sequence that will permanently rewrite your internal code. The architecture of the unshakable mind. Before you take your first step forward, you must lock the core teachings of this system into your mind. You now know that confidence is never built once. It is maintained. Action starts the process. Evidence strengthens the process, but maintenance is the only thing that keeps the process alive. You know that the confidence pipeline must be complete. Raw action alone is never enough. The evidence of your action must be captured, and that captured evidence must be deliberately interpreted into a new identity. You have learned that durable confidence depends entirely on a few key systems. You need the evidence ledger to document your capability, your character, and your consistency. You need identity narration to force your brain to accept that proof. You need daily maintenance, weekly review, and monthly calibration to keep the structure standing. You also know that setbacks do not have to destroy your self-trust. Recovery is a highly trainable skill. The act of repair is premium evidence of your strength, and every piece of scar tissue you build can become a permanent asset. You understand that your confidence is protected by your environment just as much as your mindset. The inputs you consume matter. The standards you tolerate matter. Ultimately, you know exactly what you are aiming for. You are not aiming to be loud. You are not aiming to be fake. You are not aiming to build a persona that depends on the applause of strangers. You are aiming for dangerous confidence. You are aiming for a state of being that is calm, earned, and incredibly hard to break. The freedom of the new baseline. When you implement this system, the empowerment you experience will touch every single corner of your life. You are trading random inspiration for a repeatable framework. You will completely stop depending on emotional peaks to get your work done. You now possess a structure you can use under massive pressure, making you infinitely less vulnerable to the confusion and paralysis that used to derail your weeks. This protocol gives you a radically stronger relationship with yourself. You will experience deep self-trust and a drastic reduction in self-betrayal. You will gain absolute control over your response to the world, not just your performance in it. You will experience better interpretation after your wins, better correction after your losses, and a profound steadiness when faced with deep uncertainty. Because you know you can handle the consequences of failure, bold action becomes readily available to you. You will hesitate less. You will recover faster. You will act with absolute conviction, even when your internal feeling is not perfectly aligned. You will no longer wait for the ideal emotion to strike before you make a move. Action becomes immediate. You will hold your identity steady in the most difficult moments. Criticism will hurt less. Pressure will scramble your thoughts less, and rejection will no longer define your worth. You will build progress that actually stays with you, eliminating the exhausting cycle of emotional resets. The ripple effect of internal order. The power of dangerous calm does not stop at your own mind. It bleeds into your relationships, your leadership, and your daily interactions. When your internal baseline is secure, your external friction drops dramatically. Stable confidence naturally reduces your defensiveness. When someone offers you feedback, it will feel like useful data rather than a lethal attack on your character. Conflict will feel less like an identity threat and more like a simple problem to be solved. Your conversations will become calmer, clearer, and far more productive. Deep self-trust completely eradicates your approval-seeking behaviors. You will need less constant reassurance from your peers and your partners. You will stop performing for validation and start showing up honestly, exactly as you are. People can always feel the difference between someone who wants something from them and someone who is already whole. Your stronger identity creates absolute reliability. You will keep more promises to others because you have trained yourself to keep promises to yourself. You will regulate your emotions better under stress, which means the people around you will experience you as a steady, safe, and grounded presence. Furthermore, your improved recovery skills will transform how you connect after making a mistake. You will repair faster. You will own your errors without collapsing into a spiral of shame, allowing you to rebuild trust cleanly and immediately. You will lead and decide with grounded authority, free from the endless second-guessing that plagues fragile leaders. The gravity of repeated action. As you continue to practice the concepts of this book, a beautiful shift will occur. You will begin to improve your results with less and less effort. Right now, the system requires conscious thought. You have to remember to write in your ledger. You have to force yourself to narrate your identity. But repetition turns strategy into instinct. What feels highly deliberate today will become completely normal a few months from now. Your confidence routines will become easier through sheer familiarity. Self-trust becomes effortless the moment your identity finally catches up to your capability. The proof system will begin to compound on its own. More entries in your ledger will create more visible patterns. More patterns will create faster self-recognition, and faster self-recognition will instantly neutralize your doubt. Your identity narration will become entirely natural. You will stop needing long, philosophical explanations to convince yourself of your worth. A few accurate, earned phrases will carry massive psychological force. Your mind will begin to speak the new identity automatically the moment you wake up. Your recovery will get faster. You will spend less time dramatizing your failures and more time correcting them. Your maintenance will get lighter as the system stabilizes. Less effort will be needed to hold the line because your baseline will have permanently risen. Confidence will transition from being a daily intervention to being your natural lifestyle. The 90-day blueprint. You are going to lock this lifestyle into place through a strict 90-day protocol. You must start this protocol immediately. Do not wait for the perfect week. Do not wait for the perfect mood. Do not wait until your schedule clears up, because your schedule will never clear up. You begin right now, today, with the smallest complete step. Phase 1 is the foundation, and it covers your first 30 days. You will use day 1 to install the base. Before you go to sleep tonight, you will write 3 pieces of real, undeniable proof from the last 7 days. You will turn each piece of proof into one clear identity statement. Then, you will choose one specific promise to keep in the next 24 hours. For days 2 through 30, you will relentlessly build the foundation. You will continue your daily proof capture without missing a beat. You will continue your daily identity narration. You will continue to execute one deliberate kept promise every single day. You are simply laying the bricks, one by one, proving to your nervous system that you are a person who documents reality and honors commitments. Phase 2 is maintenance, and it covers days 31 through 60. You will keep the daily foundation, but you will now add your weekly confidence reviews. At the end of every week, you will audit your kept promises and your missed promises. You will begin to tighten your environmental design, actively reducing the inputs that cause silent erosion. You will track your confidence leaks and apply immediate corrections before they grow into major fractures. Phase 3 is the stress test, covering days 61 through 90. Your system is now built and maintained. It is time to prove its strength. You will face meaningful pressure with deliberate intention. You will lean into discomfort. When friction appears, you will use your recovery tools in real time. You will prove to yourself that your confidence can survive failure, rejection, and fatigue. By the end of day 90, you will transition this protocol into a permanent lifestyle. You will keep the core practices, simplify what works best for you, and let the system become your normal way of existing in the world. The final command. You do not need another cycle of waiting. You do not need another cycle of doubting. Waiting has already taken enough of your time. Drifting has already cost you enough of your potential. It is time to build, not just hope. You must realize that you are not starting from nothing. You already have the evidence, you already have the scars, you already have the raw material required to build an empire of self-trust. The next version of you is not created by fantasy or wishing. It is created by cold, hard repetition. Record the proof. Narrate the identity. Keep the promise. You must act now because speed matters. Every day you delay strengthens the old, fragile story in your mind. Action begins the new story. Momentum loves a first step, and it ruthlessly punishes hesitation. You must leave this book with movement, not admiration. Understanding the concepts is not enough. Feeling inspired by the words is not enough. Implementation is the only thing that changes your reality. This is your final command. Build the record. Update the identity. Become hard to shake. Step out of the shadows of your own hesitation and walk into the arena with the quiet, dangerous calm of someone who knows exactly who they are. The world is waiting to see what you will do when you finally stop doubting your own power. Now, close this book and get to work.